This collision of global crises is a wake-up call to all humanity that we have to change our way of living to be more sustainable, and paradigm shifts are required that can reposition humanity as one species of the planet that appreciates the natural, cultural, and mixed heritage that we collectively hold. Protection and care for our natural and cultural heritage is a keystone in shaping a more resilient and just future for our planet and for all life. Our World Heritage seeks to continually enlarge a community of heritage advocates, co-learners, and innovators to bring heritage into the future. Thank you for your participation and for your ongoing contributions to our World Heritage. My pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you, Patricia. And like our president said, this particular webinar, or GLOBINAR as we like to call it, this particular session is part of an year-long effort with 12 themes being discussed in about 134 events. And one of the main outcomes of these discussions have been on how to involve and give people the voice and engage them in the heritage, and especially World Heritage. So this is our small effort in facilitating the voices of the people on how do they see as heritage, how can they contribute in the conservation and management of heritage. And we would like to hear more and more of these through the subsequent session and case examples from the Asia Pacific region. I would like to hand over this session to Mizuko to take over and talk about these case studies further. Thank you, Mizuko.
Thank you. So I'd like to continue with the second part of this webinar entitled Communities Caring for Heritage. This part will consist of a presentation of some case studies in the Asia Pacific region. And I'm sure that we can learn from others' experiences about community participation in heritage conservation. And I also would like to remind all the speakers to stay on also for the following roundtable. And in the program also Ms. Diane Menzies is listed. However, she will be not joining us in person, but her video will be shown together with all the videos at the end of this session. So I'd like to go in the Republic of Korea, and I'd like to invite Jin Yee Heo, who grew up and is now working in Jeju Island in South Korea, to show us her case study. Thank you.
이름이 붙었고요. 옛날에 검이라는 뜻은요, 왕이나 신을 나타내는 뜻으로요.
공화가 흘렀는데 이때 당시에도 표면이 먼저 식으면서 굳어져가요. 굳어져 가는데 밑에 흐르던 용암이 쑥 빠져 나가버리고 나니까 이 용암도 이렇게 붙어서 이렇게 됐던 거예요. 이렇게 됐던 건데 바닥 김치가 꺾어지니까.
50년 되어있는 나무예요. 그리고 넓은 들 뱅비는 옛날에는 나무가 심지 않을 때는 목장.
세계 자연유산 온라인 서포터즈가 오늘 한라산 청정지킴이로 나섰습니다. 세계 자연유산 온라인 서포터즈는 제주도 유산본부 직원들과 함께 백록담 분화군의 쓰레기를 수거하는 등 정화 활동을 벌이고 한라산의 가을 풍경을 사진과 영상에 담았습니다.
그냥 지나쳤었던 그런 길들을 이렇게 해설과 함께 들어서 이해가 쏙쏙 돼서 너무 유익하고 좋았습니다.
Will share my presentation. It is an honor to have a chance to introduce Jeju Island at today's webinar. My name is Jin Yee. I have been in charge of promoting the Natural World Heritage Jeju for 12 years. I will begin by briefing on Jeju Island and local communities' participation in the natural heritage site. As the first World Natural Heritage in Korea, Jeju was inscribed on the list as Jeju Volcanic Island and Lava Tubes on July 2nd, 2007. The Korea and Jeju government campaigned for World Heritage, seeking 1 million signatures in the process. The criteria is outstanding landscape value and unique geological environment. And the designated sites include Mountain Hanlasan Natural Reserve, Seongsan Ilchulbong Tubcon, and Komun Orun Lava Tube System, which covers about 10% of Jeju Island. And this is the picture of Natural World Heritage Site. Except for Manjangul Lava Tubes, other lava tubes are not open to the public for conservation. Now I will discuss local communities' participation. The owner of this environment asset is the future generation. That's why education for next generation is really important. We have provided various types of education related to the UNESCO brand for students, including child commentator, English camp, and the UNESCO education program. This boy is 12 years old, living in a World Heritage village, and there are about 60 children commentators at the heritage site, with many people really enjoying their explanation. Through these activities, students have boosted awareness of values of the World Heritage and serve as education venue for sharing the future direction of the volcanic island. Next, I will talk about mutual growth with residents. Jeju government has been striving for coexistence with local residents, especially as the mutual growth of residents for World Heritage is really important. And there are 7 heritage villages. Residents of the World Heritage Village have been working as World Heritage commentators and have voluntarily cleaned World Heritage sites. This is Clean Campaign residents, and we have facilitated supporters for publicity and Clean Campaign since 2012, and the World Heritage event have been held jointly with the World Heritage Village, such as World Heritage Festival, International Trekking, New Year's Sunrising Festival. They even perform at the event. And this is the World Natural Heritage Festival, and this is the intangible heritage 해녀, it's Jeju 해녀, and they perform this kind of performance. In this way, many local resident participation activities have been planned, and local residents have been actively participated in Jeju. Through such activities, they became more interested in World Heritage. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I understand that the inscription on the World Heritage List has helped also significantly to raise awareness among the local residents on the importance of the environmental issues in Jeju Island.
We have lots of environment issue related to weather and lots of development. So yes, that's why we and many tourists. So we have to use the reservation system, and we limited the tourists. So for example, Mountain Hallasan, only 1,000 people can go outside the top, and in Gamunorun we have a reservation system. Only 450 people can go outside the Gamunorun, and because of the many tourists, we increased the tourist fee. Yes, and we have lots of policy for the environment.
Very much for this interesting example. Then I like to ask Ms. Vineeta Srivastava. Vineeta is Executive Director, Heritage, the Rail Board, Ministry of Railways in India, and she has served multiple government ministries in India, and for many years worked on the Indian Railways heritage. So I'd like first to show your video, Vineeta.
One must have thought that the old vintage machines are only to be seen at the museum, but some are immensely loved and share deep sentiments of nostalgia. It proudly stands immortal and chugs up the Darjeeling hills. 140 years on, the thrill of the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway is still valued and evokes the same excitement in the visitors today. British sentiment is understandable for the brilliant engineering marvel with which it was built. At Siliguri station, the engine whistles and resonates with the passengers' joy. The narrow gauge 2-feet line is 88 kilometers long. It is ready to climb 7,000 feet into the majestic Himalayas, leaving the turmoil of the city behind. The vintage machine and the scenic landscape forms a rare sight, and a nostalgic atmosphere looms in the air. The train glides through the old forest where the Himalayan flora and fauna are deeply felt. It crosses over several roads and then desires to disappear into nature, becoming one with it. The new diesel engine halts at the station and follows the footsteps of the old steam engine. Snaking along precipitous bends and steep gradients involves a masterpiece work of a visionary. The plains seem to shimmer below, and the tea gardens welcome the traveler. Since 1880s, Mount Kanchenjunga has witnessed enthusiastic travelers from all over the world. The shiny blue toy train has been puffing steam as it winds up the famous Patasya Loop. The train reaches Ghum at 7,000 feet, the world's second highest railway station. Gentle smiles are shared with skilled driver, and Darjeeling town awaits the enthusiastic old machine.
Welcome to NMR. We have maintained this railway as the way British has left. An entire patch of the travel is full of lush green forest. While passing through the tunnels, the bridges, breath will just come to still, but you enjoy and you never forget the experience.
NMR, World UNESCO Heritage Site, is an engineering marvel and an outstanding example for innovative transportation system. To all the enthusiasts who visit this national treasure, we say, come along.
Thank you very much. Vineeta, you have the floor.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about the Indian UNESCO heritage sites. One World Heritage seems like a very exciting proposition to connect all over the world to site managers, heritage enthusiasts, and also tell you about how the very important connect of people with heritage works in India in the three sites, the three videos of different lengths that you saw. The first was for Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, more than 1.5 centuries old. The second was the Kalka Shimla Railway in northern India. Once again, more complex to manage than the Darjeeling site because of its tunnels and loops, etc. And the last but not the least, the Nilgiri Mountain Railway down south. Nilgiri meaning blue mountains, because the mist that perennially hangs there. And for the last steepest section, it also has a rack and pinion arrangement, which has its own difficulties to manage. Engineering marvels, all of them in that time. But we must not lessen the importance of a very modern railway system that serves my country all across its geopolitical entity. So we have the most modern trains running across India, but at that same time, we have 3 small pockets which are perhaps frozen in time. They have been maintained in the exact same way as they were so many years ago. It takes modern technology to keep something looking old, just like human beings need maybe dental implants and so on and so forth to keep looking young. The sites, the UNESCO heritage sites, need anything from drone mapping to check where the landslide has caused most damage, to modern ways to recreate the heritage skills like setting a valve of a steam engine or repairing parts which cannot simply be machined into their existence. And so we have heritage skills mapped into modern technology so that the site looks and feels as new as it was some time ago. At the same time, we have to cater to tourism demands, and that is where the community plays a really important role. These are all seasonal sites. Through the rains, we do not take the risk of running regular services because we might encounter falling rocks or sliding land on the way. And so the staff there rechecks the entire line after the rainy season, just prior to the winter season. They examine all the tunnels. They again use the traditional ways to check every bridge, how much has shifted. And then the community gets together to clean the site. We call it the Himalayan Cleaning Mission, because a lot of times the garbage and waste removal practices are a challenge in mountainous terrain. We also have several ongoing is a Ghum festival, which connects local crafts, cuisine, dances, and cultural experiences to the train ride itself. A number of offerings like the Jungle Tea Train Safari, so that you can link the tea gardens to the train itself. And so the landscape gets woven into the entire experience of riding a heritage train. Because this was supposed to be really brief, I will end at this point. Welcome your questions, if any. And then I have to run to catch up with the rest of my work. But thank you, Divay, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Vineeta. And of course, it was very powerful to see the Indian Railways, but talking about people participation, the issues we raised concerning the security of the places where, or the cleaning, where really the participation, people's participation is essential, I think was really very, very important and interesting. So I wonder, perhaps Divay or Jihon, do you have a question to Vineeta?
So Tana, you have a question, I believe.
Yes, I think it's wonderful to see a heritage feature still in use. And I wish that we had more old trains working in England. We have some, but what I'd like to ask is it only the 3 railways that you mentioned in India that benefit from a heritage approach, or does it apply to trains that were 20, 50, only 100 years old?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for that. The UNESCO heritage sites that we recognize are 5, 3 on the list and 2 more on a tentative list, but they've been there quite long. The rest of the section is converted to a far more modern broad gauge network. And so we find it technically and practically difficult to maintain them as they were in those times, simply because it's a different gauge. Having said that, we try to keep the vintage rolling stock operating as long as they are safe to do so. And in that, yes, we score over all the other World Heritage Railways, because Switzerland, Festiniog, there's so many others who perhaps have not kept as authentic as we have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So because of time constraints, I like to go to the other case study. Dr. Helen Jarvis has worked on issues related to Tuol slang, especially with the Yale University's Cambodian genocide program and the extraordinary chambers in the course of Cambodia. And she is still, she has been long working concerning the Cambodian memorial site. And so her presentation is exactly about that. Dr. Helen, you have the floor.
I have to apologize, we don't have a video, but I hope that this little PowerPoint presentation will show you something about what we're working on. We're looking at a point of view of preparation of a World Heritage nomination. We don't have the site yet on the World Heritage list, so it's a slightly different approach. And I would also like to introduce my colleague, Hong Nisei, Mr. Hong Nisei, who is the director of the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. And he will come in a little bit later in the slide presentation. Before I start, I would just like to say it's been fascinating so far to hear about Jeju and the railways in India. And I just wanted to say that to remind us all that heritage of humanity and world heritage includes challenging and even tragic negative experiences, as well as positive things that we are celebrating. And we can't pretend that this other side of our history has gone away. And we need to preserve some sites and evidence and to present them in different ways that can be positive and can work towards a future of reconciliation and education. So that's why I'm sorry I'm going to bring the view, the aperture a little bit down for the next few minutes. But we are working on the Khmer Rouge security system, which is one of the sites in Asia that is unfortunately a tragic one. May I, just before I go on to it, say that, you know, we can think of Hiroshima as a World Heritage Site, and we can think about other sites around the world of slavery, of wars, of colonialism. We're not the only ones who to try and address this problem of how to look at our past that is not necessarily a positive one. So I haven't got time to go into the history here, but there was 30 years of war in Cambodia, and we have mapped the sites around the country. They are by no means all the sites at all, but these are the major sites that we have identified in the different provinces and districts of Cambodia. And indeed, we, in a mapping exercise we did in the early 90s, we identified 158 prisons, 270 burial sites, and 78 memorials that you see there on the map. During this genocide period, up to a quarter or even maybe a third of Cambodia's population was lost. So it's a very serious experience and something we are still getting over. I speak as a Cambodian, although I'm originally from Australia. Here I am at the beginning. This is the first site we mapped in 1995. Using GPS technology, which was very new at the time. At least we were the first ones to use it in Cambodia, as far as we know. Now I'll just look at some of the different sites and memorials that there are scattered around the country to give you an idea. So some of them are just skulls in a corner of a room, as you saw in the first one. Now we have on the screen some makeshift or small wooden memorials, many of which have collapsed in time since these photographs were taken. And on the other extreme, we come to Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum, which is more well known around the world, of which Nisai is the director. And so what we had to do was to think, well, from all of these different sites, how could we describe this this phenomenon and have representative sites. So what we did was we've looked at 3 sites that we want to propose as a serial nomination for World Heritage, cultural sites. And we've got 3 sites. One on the top left is the what we've called a precursor or prototype site of the first prison that was developed. The one in the center is the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum, and the other one is Jung Aek Memorial Genocide Center. So let me turn to Nisai at this point to speak about the sites in particular. He wrote his thesis, his master's thesis, recently on the first site, M13. Over to you, Nisai.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Helen Chavis. I'm glad to be here, and it's an honor. And as time is limited, so I would go roughly to the introduction of the site, and you can have a question later regarding to this. So the reason for us to have this site together as a proposal nomination for the heritage because of the history link. As here you can see the aerial photo of the M13. Which was outside Phnom Penh, and it was functioning from 71 to 75. So this was, they have no physical buildings. We were digging up the soil as a pit, and they detained people inside. And the number was cannot be estimated as no document left, but according to testimony, it's not less than 300 people were detained, tortured, and killed beside the site. And this was led by the former Khmer Rouge, the first Khmer Rouge meant to be trialed by the ECCC, Kangik Iwales. And after this, so this is some of the picture we did investigation on the ground, and we met survivors, met former guards. You can see here it's the former guards of M13. He was showing us where the prison pits and detention or interrogation pits. and some remains he found at the place, like the bones of the maybe the victims, and some instrument or piece of clothes, but this not yet been identified further study. So again, after the M13, and then from 71 to 75, which came to Phnom Penh, and he start running S21 from March 26 to 79. So where they have at least 18,000 people were imprisoned. As you can see in this picture, this big part of clothes of the victims were displayed in 1980s, and now these clothes have been being preserved or in a proper way, but it's not as a number as before. Along with that, we have photo exhibition inside, and we do also have a memorial. This memorial was erected in the 80s, where it used to have be a place for commemoration of what we called at the time as the Day of Hatred. And since 2019 until now, we changed the Day of Hatred to the National Days of Remembrance, 20th of May. And you can see this is the inauguration day of the memorial monument, apart from the previous one, and this was in 2015. And yes, then we can see around the monument, we have the names of the victims, which inscribed in Khmer, and there are 12,000 names on it. And yes, just about the memorial. And then after this, another site we also want to link, because it was like subsidy, or it was a place where Dutch brought people from S21 to be killed, what is called Chiang Ai killing fields. So this is a recent photo you can see, and around 8,000 skulls and skeletons are stored in this big memorial, and there were always a commemoration day of 20 May happening since the late 80s until today. So this, you can see the display of the skulls and skeletons inside the big monument. And yes, so in brief, the reason for us to link, because first it's about the history link, and second it's about the role and the duty of this site as an educational place on peace and reconciliation. So then I think that's it from me, and come to this, we will talk about more about, maybe Dr. Helen can briefly. Thank you.
Thank you. If I'll just say a few concluding words, then thank you, Nisai. So I think Nisai mentioned about the commemorations at the sites. This is the 3 sites have been put together, and we have a number of things involved in them: the monuments themselves that have been built, the names of the victims, ceremonies, school visits, exhibitions. We have permanent exhibition, temporary and mobile. And so we are putting this all together. And just to conclude, most people may know that there has been a lot of discussion in World Heritage about sites of memory associated with recent conflict. And in fact, a lot of them have been on, as we say, on the back burner while this has been discussed. And this year there was a series of open-ended working group meetings, which I was able to join, to work out how we can go forward with this, to try to see how World Heritage sites that may have had a negative past can be presented in a positive manner for education and reconciliation. And we're really hoping that this will be accepted at the next session, the 45th session, when it takes place. And then also next year, we will hope to be submitting our serial nomination. So thank you for this. It's a little bit a bit different from what everybody else is talking about with the videos of their sites, but I hope it gives some food for thought to the meeting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you to both. It gives us lots of thoughts, and we can't deny history. We need to use it for the future. Absolutely. And I think, Jihon, you have been working on the memory issues also last year during the 2021 debate on that. Do you have a question to Dr. Helen or to Mr. Nisai?
Thank you, Mizuko. If you allow me to ask a very quick question to Dr. Helen Jarvis. Actually, she's very famous in the field of memory work, and it's a great honor for me to talk to you today. Since today's session really focused on the community participation concerning World Heritage management and conservation issues, actually this question can be expanded to the older speakers. But since you're talking about some negative or uncomfortable heritage sites that the Cambodia is preparing for the World Heritage nomination, I'm wondering whether the local people, conception toward this nomination. I mean, are they supporting this nomination a lot, and how they are engaged in the process? That kind of aspects will be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, I think that Nisai touched on that somewhat about the ceremonies that take place regularly at the two sites. The precursor site has not been really established yet. It was only recently identified and uncovered. The other two sites have been in operation since 79 and early 1980 and are very widely visited by Cambodians and by foreigners also visiting. And I think, Nisai, do you want to add anything about that? But we have also survivors from these sites are in attendance at this moment, still meeting people. Only yesterday to meet the Secretary General of the United Nations who came to visit. So there is a very positive spirit, I think. But Nisai, you are probably better placed than I to say something.
Yes, thank you. To say in short that regarding to the people, they really love to decide to be in the list of UNESCO because it would be long preserving, and the memories can be kept for long even after. As just one more point to add to you that our archives have already been in the Memory of the World Register since 2009. But to be sure, this kind of place will be preserved in any circumstance, that if we can be nominated as a World Heritage Site, it would be more grateful. And participation of the local community is also great. They all understand and they all coming to join our ceremony, especially ritual ceremony, because this is kind of to pray to their ancestor, to their lost relative families. Not only Cambodian, but also Thai people who are coming to the museum to do the ritual because they found their lost relative here and they did this Buddhist ceremony. Yeah. Thank you. I think my answer can touch your question.
Thank you very much.
And
okay.
Helen, there is a question in the chat box which says, is the purpose of this kind of nomination also to fight against revisionism?
Yes, revisionism or denying history is a very important motivation we have in preparing this nomination. I was also involved in the tribunal, the Khmer Rouge tribunal that Nisai made reference to. I think in Cambodia we have a lot of background of documentation and memorialization. As I mentioned, there were memorials all over the country, but the historical accountability was something lacking. And so there's been, in recent years, attention to a hybrid tribunal, international and national, which is trying to, or has, it's just concluding its work, establish the historical memory and indeed the preservation of the sites. That's a very, very key point, is to prevent denial and revisionism that seeks to wipe out from history what happened in Cambodia. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then I'd like to shift to our last case study of today. And let me start by introducing The speaker, Mr. Rui Miura, who started to work in a firm established in the World Heritage town of Omoricho in Iwami Gizan silver mine while he was still a student, and is now a regular employee in that firm, and he is in charge of public relations. So perhaps we will start by the video, please.
Nestled in between the low-ranging mountains of Shimane Prefecture lies the town of Omori. Located in the Sain region of western Japan, this is a region that still has many treasures yet to be experienced by people who come to visit us. Omori used to be a prosperous silver mining town during the 16th to 20th century. The silver mines, which used to provide the livelihoods of the town's residents, still remain. Omori is a small town of 400 people with an atmosphere created from the accumulation of history, heritage, and culture. The surrounding forest, still untainted from human development, allows for a lifestyle in tune with nature and the seasons. Origins of Japanese culture, still part of the town's identity. Drawn to this lifestyle, a new and young generation of residents are increasing, keeping the town lively and moving forward. We are always here, waiting to share what this town has to offer.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miura, you have the floor.
Hello, my name is Rui Miura. Thank you for this opportunity. I now live and work in the town of Omori, where the World Heritage Site Iwami Gizan silver mine is located. It is a small town with 400 residents, and I'm originally from Nagoya, a city in central Japan, and moved here in 2011. I am in charge of public relations in a local company, and I'm an editor-in-chief of a PR magazine of the company. Mainly, I send out information not about the company, but about the local lifestyle and the magazine and on the company's website. And sometimes guide guests from other areas through the town as a local resident. I enjoy my life here, surrounded by nature and cultural heritage as seen in the movie, and also a wonderful community. Many people have asked me on what made me settle here. And my answer is always the lifestyle. And it is the love and pride that the local residents have for this town. And when I first visited this town of Omori, I was a student. And even though I was a total stranger, locals had welcomed me very warmly and invited me to dinners, taking me to the ocean to swim, taking me to a hot spa, and so on. And I fell in love immediately with their personalities and the environment of Omori. And another thing that inspired me is that people in this town always took things as their own issues. And we do not simply leave everything to the government, but consider things ourselves. For example, we clean up the heritage ourselves and make own rules for traffic, science, and commerce, etc. It goes to tourism, education, the conservation of cultural properties, renovating abandoned houses. And the thing I love the most is that the whole village participates in raising a child. I raised 2 children here, far from my parents and relatives, but I have no worries at all. And my neighbors always take care of us and help us whenever we need help. And I also love how local seniors tell us the ways to enjoy the whole environment of the town. And for example, my masters, who are about 30 to 40 years older than me, treat me as a friend and share their knowledge and skills about nature and the environment around them, such as hunting boars, fishing eels, or gathering wild edible plants or mushrooms. And this is how I now enjoy my life, hunting and gathering in local mountains. And I feel really happy and fulfilled when I share what I gathered with my family and neighbors. And consequently, I feel the importance of not only conserving the heritage itself, but also inheriting the local lifestyle. And I would like to mention that we also have a good bakery, restaurants, or liquor shop, and many charming shops in the town. So it is not just a tourism town, but also a place with a life. And I'd like to call it a living heritage. And many young people and creators, such as photographers, graphic designers, sculptors, or musicians, are residing in the town recently. And I would say our life here is becoming more and more fun and enjoyable. And as we all know, the Japanese society is shrinking, the population and the whole society. And small towns like us are already facing the danger of disappearing. And we have to admit that we can no longer rely 100% on the government. But Omori is a town which was left out by modernization after the silver mine had closed in 1923. And now we have only 400 residents. But ironically, we were able to conserve the beautiful townscape and the lifestyle because the town was not modernized. And now we stand on our own feet and maintain our lifestyle, coping with each other. And after residing for more than a decade in this town, I feel that it is my turn now to inherit this lifestyle to the next generation. I think Omori is not just a calm and peaceful town in the countryside, but a cutting-edge town full of creativity and inspiration. And I hope to welcome you one day and have you experience the lifestyle that I love. That is all. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for your experience, but also many suggestions, actually, I think. I understand that the population in Japan is really decreasing. And of course, Omori town is a small town. However, it recently really succeeded in increase the number of inhabitants. So what do you think really attracts people to live and work in this place?
I think one reason is that the local companies are really participating in renovating houses and creating a place to work and a place to live. And that is, I think, attracting people to reside, because people don't just need the, even if you have the ideal lifestyle in this town, if you don't have work or a place to live, you cannot reside. So I think the participation of the local companies is really important. They're taking a really important role in this town.
Thank you very much. I'd like to conclude here this case study and video presentation part, and I'd like to ask then Jihon moderation part.
Thank you, Mizuko. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all. I'm Jin Kim from the Korean National Commission for UNESCO and Konkuk University. We have just watched very interesting videos and presentation from different heritage sites in Asia. There's no Pacific region, but you will see one video at the end of this session. And I have actually there are more to be shared later. So let me open the roundtable anyway for now. So it's great pleasure for me to invite two panelists today. We wanted to have three, but Dr. Paul Rogers had an urgent call from government, so he had to leave. So are we going to ask Professor Jaeheon from Konkuk University and Dr. Aruna Bagchee from the Vernacular Heritage of Sari rivers in India. We're going to join the panel discussion. First, knowing that Professor Choi has a long experience of working with World Heritage sites in the Republic of Korea, and he has an expertise in the various issues of World Heritage. So I'd like to invite him first to share his ideas on the roles of the local communities for the sustainable management of the World Heritage sites. I heard that Professor Choi prepared a short presentation to share his key points. So Professor Choi, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jian. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all participants and our World Heritage member and friends. My name is Jaeheon Choi. I'm the professor of Geography and World Heritage Studies in Konkuk University, Seoul. I'd like to take this chance to tell you how a people-centered approach in heritage can be implemented in a practical way in the case of Korea. From the local resident perspective, the PPT, please. Yes, thank you. From the local resident perspective, public policies designed for World Heritage or cultural heritage preservation are seen as ignoring local people in their decision-making process, as well as disregarding local people's living condition, which in many cases lead to big disputes, not only between the local community and the government authorities, but also extensively the conservation-oriented and development-oriented one. Korea has no exception. I'd like to talk about the 4 different ancient capital city cases from 3 kingdoms period, starting around 1st century BC to 7th century AD, so-called Gyeongju, Gongju, Buyeol, and Iksan. All of them were inscribed on a World Heritage list and are being specially protected with the specific legal status, so-called ancient cities law. For instance, Gyeongju historic area consists of 5 components within the Gyeongju City municipality, and the Baekje historic area is composed of 8 components distributed over 3 different municipalities. These cities have made various efforts to improve the local resident living environment, so far with the government subsidies. One example was old dilapidated residential area in Gyeongju, located in the buffer zone near Daenung-won, which means the King's Graveyard, where over 80% of all buildings were aged over 30 years old. The Gyeongju city provided financial subsidies to repair and renovate old houses every year, starting from 2014 to 2021. As a result, this area, so-called Hwangnidan-gyeol, has become a tourist attraction with traditional Hanok restaurant and shops. Next slide, please. The urban planning process played a crucial role to coordinate various stakeholders, including experts, local residents, and local authorities in a balanced way. Those four ancient cities have a similarity to set up careful urban management plans and urban regeneration project combined with its basic urban planning procedure. The residential environment improving project has been commonly implemented in four ancient cities in harmony with the traditional housing landscape, subsidizing substantial amount of money to build new traditional Korean-style houses, so-called Hano, as well as to renovate old houses of 100 million Korean won. That is equal to 80,000 US dollars for each case. It is because Hano is usually one-story or two-story light wooden structure built on the surface without harming or damaging archaeological remains. Next slide. The city of Gwangju has completed over 100 individual projects for remodeling and reconstructing old Hanok houses. By adaptive reuse, the old Hanok Korean traditional houses has converted into cafes, bookstores, and so on, while preserving the original conditions, and became a foundation for resident voluntary cultural activities. This can be a successful case of the government-supported project working with the resident through compromise and cooperation between stakeholders rather than extreme confrontation. The limit and scope of citizen participation are determined according to the plans and policies of various public institutions. Next slide, please. The level of citizen participation is dependent on the level of the government regulations according to local authorities or central government. In 2020, Korea enacted the World Heritage Act, which including Article 19, a provision on collecting resident opinions to ensure the participation of local residents. According to the World Heritage Act, local government must establish an implementation plan for each World Heritage site and hold a public hearing with local residents. However, the specific method has not been decided yet. In the above cities, the research shows that the local residents are not actively participating in the decision-making process of various large-scale government projects. More communication with the local government, cultural heritage experts, and residents would be necessary. Another example is from Gwangju and Buyo jointly operated a communication platform, so-called Living Lab project, introducing digital technology and the internet-based platform with a budget of 3.2 million US dollars. However, it was known that only young people participated, while the internet and the digitally underprivileged old generations were hard to participate in. Therefore, it should be necessary to figure out how to enhance local communities' participation in the whole generations from institutional viewpoint. Also, we need to expand and reinforce the IT-based World Heritage education program concerning capacity building to the general public too. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Professor Choi. Since you cast so many important questions, so I don't know how to, proceed further discussion, because, the balancing between the development conservation is always one of the most difficult question in World Heritage Sites, and I think everybody's gonna agree. And you mentioned that the addressing this issue with the participation of the local people in the historic cities in the Republic of Korea. And you also mentioned the new World Heritage Act in Korea, which stipulated the participation of local people as a kind of mandatory things concerning the conservation and management of World Heritage Sites. Also, you touched on the importance of the IT education to accommodate the older generations, participation in the decision-making concerning World Heritage. I think, there are so many important things, but let's keep it for a second, because, we have another important panelist who's gonna talk, who's gonna share interesting ideas of hers. Okay. Thank you, Professor Choi again. Let me invite Dr. Bagchee for sharing her interesting cases and ideas. Dr. Bagchee is representing the vernacular heritage of Sari weavers in India today. With your case, I think, you can share the aspects that concerning the engagement of the community and civil society for heritage management as well. So, Dr. Bagchee.
I would like to talk about the vernacular architecture of handloom sari weavers, but it's been fascinating to listen to the other speakers because so many of the same issues have arisen in the work that we did. And I will try and point out what the similarities are. The sari is India's and much of South Asia's shared living heritage. And I will come back to this principle of the living heritage. The tradition of handloom sari weaving is a much storied tale crossing all the boundaries of this region in terms of the textiles, the products, the designs, the motifs, and so on. So, drawing on my experience to keep it simple for this particular function, I'd like to stick to Chanderi, which is one of 8 places chosen by INTACH as for the serial nomination of vernacular architecture of sari weaving centers in India. And I want to share with you the main lessons we brought back from the field in this project, because it turned out to be as much a learning from the field experience as professionally supporting the local community to do the vernacular architecture, keep it up or renovate it. So what were the main learnings? I would stress 2 important learnings in this. I think you can go through some of the slides. First of all, the handloom weaving industry in India is deeply rooted in the natural as well as social geographies of the countryside. By the natural heritage, I mean local soils in Chanderi, which is the black cotton soil, the extreme temperatures of heat and cold winter temperatures, the uniqueness of the trees that grow there and so on are a part of the mix because that's how the industry has come up here or got established here. By the social mixture, I mean that the farming community is mainly Hindu. The weavers are mainly Muslims who migrated here from Dhaka and East Bengal. The financial, management of this industry in terms of marketing and loans and so on is largely among the Marwadis. So there are many groups, and I will come back to why this is important. So if we are to keep up this industry, we have to understand the physical and social geographies in which each of these, like Chanderi, the places in Dhaka and others where these iconic sari weaving centers exist, we have to understand the entire socio-geographical landscape of those places and understand that there is a deep connect between the product and its place of origin. So that's the first point, and I'll come back to it. The second thing I'd like to point out is that there is the link between the environment as well as the socio-economic system in which it thrives, by which I mean that while we can speak of the natural heritage and the industrial heritage, vernacular or modern, actually in this case, you find that the 2 are intermixed because it is from the local wood that they make their roofs. It is from the flora and fauna in this region that they get their motifs. So it is the deep baulis, the wells that are dug here from which they get enough cool water for gumming and for making the thread wet and then being able to spin it and so on. So taking the natural as well as the socio-economic mixture you have this exquisite handloom coming out. The second thing is, can we conserve it as it is forever and ever as it stands? That means in these 8 clusters. My personal feeling after studying all this is that we will have to do much more than that, because when we work at the local, political and social levels, we realize that it is not as if everybody is interested in keeping them. There are competing interests and motivations in how this should proceed. And we as professionals have to keep in mind that we can only be facilitators. It was a pleasure to work with INTACH because it is an NGO and didn't belong to any one department of government. So it was just trying to facilitate how to bring all the various interests together. And if we keep this empathetic outlook to our fieldwork, I think it is possible for us as professionals to help them with adaptive change. The traditional inner courtyards are always limed with dung paste because that protects these little instruments that they use in their weaving. But there was a strong demand that at least in 1 or 2 rooms, they wanted cemented floors. And we had to give in to that. And I'll explain why, because it was just too much effort for them to go and fetch the dung every day. Too many man hours were lost in collecting the dung from outside. They don't own the cattle, you see. And then to make the paste and use it. So too much labor was lost in that. Similarly, the outdoor space is extremely important to keep as it is, because this is where they do the thread, the spinning and the stretching of the yarn. And you see these people working. In the 3rd slide on this line, you will see that the alleyways between the houses have been paved by the municipality. But those who are in this profession have made a little sort of gutter between them because they need to put their stakes for stretching it. So those sort of changes in what we visualize the lane should be, or the roads should be in this village, have to be changed and adapted for if their profession is to go on. Basically, what we did was to take 2 cottages, and I won't go through all the slides because we're short of time, and did the roofs and the windows. This was the condition first, and we saw that the wood beams were decayed and needed to be redone. So we did it in the original vernacular language, but putting in new beams with the stone and put the same tiles back up on the floor. The result was that we were able to have a completely renovated hut, artisanal cottage, you can call it, like this. There was a 2nd story one where similarly the roof needed to be done. So this was the roof condition, and you see from the inside that it was all plastic sheeted because it was leaking. So that was opened up, and again the same wood beams and truss in the same vernacular language. We repaired it with larger stone slabs, so that was repaired as well. And in the open space that was available, we put in a toilet space, a joint toilet between the 2 homes, again in the same vernacular architecture. So are we then making too much adaptive change? I would say not, because staying within the traditional architectural vocabulary in Chanderi, we put in amenities which we thought were legitimate. After all, the younger generation, if it has to stay in handloom weaving, cannot be denied the facility of electricity or antenna and so on. They were added on without losing the basic architectural heritage. And they were grateful because we explained to them why it was important to keep the way it was, because it was helping them to keep the temperatures cool, to use the local products and so on. So I think that it is possible. And to sum up, I would say 3 things are important. While professionally we may divide heritage into categories such as built and natural, sacred, vernacular, etc., these are but labels, and we have to think of it as a complex reality on the ground. In India, we have local governments all the way up from village to state, national, many departments and so on. INTACH as a facilitator could work with all these various levels and understand their points of view and try and get them to see how important this heritage was and how they could support it. That was one big lesson learned. The second big lesson was that the mutual learning consisted of both the local people explaining to us, first of all, the particularity of their heritage in the sense of how they had constructed these homes all these years. And then the INTACH professionals then building on it and solving their problems in the modern age and giving them some better solutions. Most importantly, will this always be a smooth process? I think not, because there were many conflicts, conflicting perspectives. And so endeavor, patience, empathy, and skill negotiations have to be a part of what we do in the field. So I see heritage, as all of us do, as a multi-skeined continuing thread of civilization that needs very careful nurture. And it is my hope that what we keep in mind is that the end result we want is a continuation, that we can see this heritage, consider it precious even into the future. By that, I mean not only in museums. In India already there are many repositories of saris that have indexed saris, patterns, books written on it, and so on. It is my hope that we will continue it as a living heritage across South Asia, because today many, many millions still do cottage industry sari weaving, and it is a skill. And we need to preserve both the natural heritage and the human resources that have given us this wonderful art, vocation, textile, whatever we see. Touching very briefly on the points from the other speakers, I think I would not like saris to be all taken to a museum like the railways or used and then thrown away. I think handloom saris are extremely valuable in today's age of environmental thing. They're not like nylon. They're reusable, they dissolve, and they're environment friendly. I completely agree that we have to keep in mind the negative as well as positive aspects of our social interactions. Yes, there are sometimes conflicts. We have to get over them and work and facilitate people to realize that each is a part of the whole. In India, that's as important as anywhere else. And most importantly, it is a shared learning across the textile and across textile industry, weaving industry, the design industry, as well as widely shared across the country and the Asia region. So I would love to go back to the Korean example and say, and the Japanese, that this is a living heritage and let us look after it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bagchee. Well, when we were talking about the introduction of each panelist, before today's session starts, she asked me to add the expression of, to explain herself as a passionate for heritage. And I could really, feel your passion for the heritage you mentioned, and also in general. She touched on very important, aspects concerning the conflicting interest among different, local communities, and also the governments and the involvement of the experts, NGOs as a facilitator. I think that is something to think about as well, because local communities' participation is always very important, but sometimes experts or NGOs need to be there as a culture broker to facilitate the communication and cooperation. I do agree with you. And actually, there are several questions in the chatting box. One for Professor Choi. There is a question concerning the platform, Living Lab. Can you address a little bit about that project?
Thank you very much for this question. And I think that the Living Lab project is quite the partly a successful project, partly is an unsuccessful story too. Because LivingNet actually designed for the small cities like the Gongju and the Buyong, which has not enough financial resource to build up their own IT platform. So these two cities actually belong to the Baekje, the historic cities. So they are jointly try to develop a kind of IT-based platform to attract a lot of the people into their own region. And then they designed for some kind of the personal mobility, the instruments, and also some kind of information shared the website. But the problem is that they turn out that after they made some questionnaire to the public, and they find a conclusion that there are only young generations respond to that question. And the people who really love to use the IT platform, like this LivingNet, most of those people are younger generation people. So it means that the older generations who is not familiar with this kind of IT technology is quite reluctant to use that, and they're scared to use that. So, but because you think that the older people actually who has plenty of money, they are rich people, enough to money to spend all of the money for the site while they visiting the place. The younger people is poor and they just adjourn there a very short period of time. So it turned out that they need a kind of another platform to attract the older generations together. So this is why I say that partly successful, but partly not successful. And but yeah, anyway, this is quite a big challenge for us to do that one, because I like to all of the World Heritage cities in Korea. I like to most of the local authorities maybe put some money on that kind of the investment to attract a lot of the general population into their own region. So this is what I thought. And what is the second question, Jian?
Well, the second question is actually not only to you, but also, I guess, Dr. Bagchee. I mean, Sudena Appelhoek asked what level of financial help can be made possible when we need to conserve all this heritage. I think you, Professor Choi, mentioned already some part of, financial issues. So maybe Dr. Bagchee, you'd like to add a little bit more about this question, or Professor Choi, you can add further as well.
Yes, the money is the only matter. Always the money. No matter where you are
never enough
around the world. Yes. And the financial assistance and the financial one is main issues most of all of the World Heritage sites too. Korea, we have 15 World Heritage sites around the world, but including all of the serial nomination, each of the number of the World Heritage sites is over 100. And then Korean government want to keep their World Heritage site for the public property, not owned by privately. Because if privately owned the property means that the public money, the people's tax money should go to the private, the house or private one. There is only one exception, like the Hawaii and the Yangdong, that is the Korean village, old rural village from the ancient time, not the ancient time, actually starting around the 15th century. That is quite an exception. But most of the other World Heritage site is owned by the government right now. So all of those monies coming from the government sector, especially for repair. But there is a certain exceptions like the examples I provided you, the 4 ancient cities. Actually, those sites are archaeological sites, remains. So most of the cultural landscape right now on that archaeological remains is protected by the World Heritage Law, protection law, but it owned by some personal, privately. So it kind of some contradictions because that kind of houses, the old houses, is not belong to government property, but to preserve and to protect the archaeological remains under that private property, government should do something to protect that archaeological remains. So one of their inventions for the government is that just to provide some financial aid to renovate or repair their own houses, like the old traditional house, which is quite lightweight and also wooden structure, and also keep the traditional landscape. Also, that is the light, so there is not much chance to damage or harm the underground, the archaeological remains. So they just to keep the strict regulation to protect the underground remains, but allow them to repair and renovate some surface structure, most of those are houses, residential houses. So that is the another story. Okay, so there are quite a lot of the different strategies right now applied in the Korean World Heritage Site. Thank you, Jihon. Thanks for the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Choi. I think, like you can provide cases endlessly. And if there are further questions, please email to Professor Choi. And actually, concerning the specific question toward Dr. Bagchee, there was one question from Mariella Rincon concerning the underrepresented, the type of your heritage sites in the World Heritage List. I mean, she's asking the reasons for the poor representative this kind of type of World Heritage on the World Heritage List. Can you briefly address this question?
Yeah. I think in a sense, I would link the two questions, because heritage to me is something that the people have to value. And for the Sari, I don't see that just these 8 places are going to be museums that we should be proud of for the future. The Sari will survive if it is worn by the women of India, and if it is shared, and if others make skirts and blouses and so on out of it. It is the craft. That's why I keep saying that it is the people who have this craft and who will continue in the future who should. I do agree with Professor Choi that there is a limit to which you can subsidize this, and we have run into problems with the government's policy of subsidizing handmade cloth versus textile cloth. There's a big problem between the two. But leaving that aside, there are enough people still involved in the handloom industry as their profession, as their life work, and passing it on to the generation. So I think it will survive. Coming to the Northeast or any of our tribal areas, there is a lot of work being done on those places. And there are both museums as well as textile weaving centers. And it's a thriving industry. It has not yet come on the national register. Yes, that is something that we need to work on. But it's not something that we have neglected. It is something that we need to, maybe, I don't know whether if the, how should I say, the nomination is another process, but it's not something you cannot see in India today. It's very, very much alive. And the good thing about, coming back to Professor Choi's problems, in India, we do have public funds and budget for it, but we also have a lot of community participation. A lot of private people are setting up their own homes built in the traditional style and then using it as Airbnb and so on. So once that catches on and people realize that these old-fashioned homes with the high ceiling, wood beams, etc., are not only aesthetic, but are also climate friendly, I think it will be a revival of sorts. And the same with our textiles. It's what Fab India does. It's what many other big commercial organizations are doing, bringing back the handlooms.
Thank you. And actually, there is a comment from Tom Turner concerning your presentation. I want to go through, but because time is very limited, I hope everybody could enjoy his comments in the chatting box. I want to close the roundtable. Actually, I don't want to, but because time is running, I need to. But there's one unanswered question toward Mr. Rui Miura. I think there was a question asking if there were any downsides of his experience living there. It's going to be great if Mr. Rui Miura can answer this question briefly.
one thing that I would like to mention is that children have fewer opportunities for educational activities or less access to entertainment, such as like movies, major concert events, or exhibitions. And I believe that children's experience in the town can substitute those things to a certain level, but I believe that also it could be a frustration for children themselves. And well, and to put it in an extreme way, it can lead to population outflow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miura, for your kind answer. It's a great pity that I need to close this discussion because it is really difficult for us to be here all together. But I know that there will be another chance for us, actually not just another, many chance for us that our World Heritage prepared. So I think my colleagues will going to introduce the opportunity later on in the closing session. So I will ask Divay, my colleague, to close today's session. Thank you.
So thank you, Jihon. I also know it's very difficult to close this very interesting session, all the case studies and the panel discussion, but we have several other videos which after the session ends, we will be playing them in a loop. And just a few closing remarks I would make are that something that we had been discussing in the Our World Heritage has been reiterated even today on how important it is to involve communities in heritage conservation and management. And when we say involve, it is not only related to their physical involvement, but I think it is also very important that they are involved intellectually and also involved in what really kind of heritage that really needs to go onto the World Heritage. And I think like somebody did mention that right now, the kind of sites that are listed are slightly more monumental or more official in nature, but there are so many types and varieties of sites that people see them as heritage, which also requires to be recognized as World Heritage. And another important thing we saw today was it was not only celebratory heritage, it is also site that reflected certain painful events of the history, but yet they were important sites for peace and reconciliation, as was seen from the Cambodian example. So the various kinds of typologies and variety of case studies was itself very overwhelming, and each one was really reiterating the importance of community participation. And another thing that was sort of reconfirmed or reiterated was the need to really relook at the artificial distinction or the professional distinction between nature, culture, intangible heritage, which is also one of the themes that we have been discussing a lot in the Our World Heritage, because this is not how communities see it, as was also seen from several examples from Korea as well as India. Communities see them as integrated. They experience them in together. They don't differentiate so much between natural and cultural. They are sort of, I would say, aspects of the same coin. And I think maybe in the 50 years of World Heritage, we would be able to make these changes to get more and more people's voices as the determining factor on what heritage we would like to see in the next 50 years on the World Heritage. With that, I again thank all of you for participating and sharing your expertise and knowledge. It was a great learning for me as well, and I'm sure all the participants also benefited. And I would hand over this session to Mike, the Secretary of the Our World Heritage, to give the closing remarks and also perhaps tell you about other things that are also scheduled as part of this event, which you can also benefit from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Divay, and also thank you to the moderators, Mizuko and Jihon, and to the participants and those who have sent in videos, because we had a lot of videos, which was extremely interesting. We have posted all the videos on our website. Today revolves really around those civil society action and participation topics. And our World Heritage would like to continue doing this to really put more emphasis on videos and on social media and these kind of things. So today we continue with the GLOBINAR. Tomorrow we have a slightly more formal program with we invited many international organizations that will hopefully talk about the civil society issue and how they look at it. And then on Wednesday we have also a very interesting program more locally, because with a few people we gathered here in Florence, and Florence is 40 years on the World Heritage list. So on the 16th we will hopefully do a streaming of there's a very interesting keynote of Christina Cameron, but also a hopefully very interesting roundtable. On Thursday, we will have a session of 3 hours in which members from our World Heritage that are actually here for the Del Bianco Foundation, who hosted us very kindly, I must not forget to thank them. For them, we will make a series of lectures, which we will also stream. Keep an eye on the website. Thank you for joining. And yeah, hope to see you later in this same space. And I say goodbye to everyone. Everyone is waving. Thank you for attending. And I will not close this Zoom. We can have a break.